Hello, and welcome to another episode of the B2B Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Nils, and today I'm going to share with you what I learned working as an apprentice for a craftsman. Now, in one of my previous episodes, I shared the story of how I failed absolutely miserably as a Xerox sales rep and shared the lesson that I learned. Now, after several months of being in therapy and starting to pull out of this severe tailspin, I decided to go in a completely different direction for my career. And this was a really difficult time because I was coming off of this epic failure as a Xerox sales rep, feeling really depressed and really like I had no direction at all, to deciding to do something completely different that I had never done before. I've always had an interest in woodworking and building things with my hands, because there's a tremendous amount of satisfaction that I get from building. And I felt like this was going to be my time to explore it. I said goodbye to the professional world for a while. And after the whole Xerox debacle, I decided it was to leave the corporate world and then experiment with something new. So I did some research and found and connected with an artist who made high-end custom furniture. This individual was a true craftsman. And the furniture he made was featured in architectural magazines. It was really impressive. Everything was made from wood, and I wanted to learn everything that he did. So fortunately, he was looking for an apprentice and ultimately hired me. And I did a lot of what you would normally think an apprentice would do, run-of-the-mill shop duties like cleaning and organizing, etc. And then he got an order for a patio table that would be made 100% out of teak wood. Now, teak wood is wood that's used on boats, and it is very durable, and it's incredibly beautiful wood, but it takes a lot of work to get there. And I'll never forget the day that the delivery truck rolled up to our shop and unloaded all the raw teak wood that we were going to use to build the table. And I thought to myself, how on earth is this project going to work? I mean, there were just boards everywhere. And if you've seen raw wood, especially like teak wood, it doesn't look like anything special. It just looks like very dark chunks of wood. And there were all different thicknesses of boards, sizes, lengths, everything. It was all over the place. But the artist, he had a plan. And he would lay out the instructions for me, and I would follow them as precisely as I could. And little by little, the pieces of the table started to come together. The legs, the support structure, the top we did in one entire piece, right? The extension mechanism, because this was going to be a patio table, and it can convert from holding, 3 chairs on each side to 5 chairs on each side. So it had extensions on the end. Now, all these things, these pieces, seemed to appear out of nowhere. There was a lot of little steps that came through, and then ultimately, the bigger pieces became visible. It was kind of like a Bob Ross painting. If you've ever watched Bob Ross paint, you know what I'm talking about. Everything looks like a big mess until all of a sudden, there's this beautiful landscape with some nice trees, a river, some animals, and of course, happy little clouds. So finally, it was the delivery day, and I was ecstatic. We loaded the truck with the table and then drove to Hollywood, where the client lives. I mean, who else but in Hollywood is going to buy a $10,000 patio table custom made out of teak wood? It was exciting times. So once the table was set in place in the backyard, it looked absolutely perfect. And we did some fine tuning and some little adjustments to make sure it was just right. But I felt incredibly proud to have been part of taking this raw pile of wood and turning it into an absolutely beautiful table. The fact that he sold it for $10,000 was pretty cool too. Now, the client was extremely happy. So on all, everything was really good. A few months later, I did eventually leave the work that I was doing with that artist. It just didn't work out, and he was not busy enough to keep me on staff, and that was okay, as I was ready to transition and had a desire to go back to work for a software company as I had done for so many years before. But when I went back to the next software company I worked for, it was really different. This time, I had a different perspective than I had ever had before. This time, I felt more confident in my abilities. This time, I was actually excited to go to work. Let's contrast that with my work at Xerox and some of my other companies I worked for previously, where it was really difficult. But I was excited. So the lesson that I learned through this time in my life is that it's okay to take detours in your life. both personal and professional. This one definitely was a detour, both personally and professionally. And actually, taking detours is a great thing in your life because you will always learn a tremendous amount no matter what the detour is or how long it lasts. This was a relatively short period of time when I was working with this artist, but it had a profound impact on me and everything I did in the organizations that I worked for afterwards. And I still love to build things with my hand now, and I get to do it with my kids, but I realize that it doesn't have to be my sole profession. It can be a part of my life. It doesn't have to be my entire life. And that's where I find the balance. So, take solace in knowing that if you've ever wanted to go through a detour, or if you have gone through a detour, or if you're worried about how to explain the story of a detour, know that it just doesn't matter. Take the detour, and perhaps it will open a different door. Perhaps it will help you see things more clearly. Perhaps it will give you a different perspective, and that is always going to serve you well no matter what. So I hope you enjoyed this story along with the lesson learned, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.